let's talk about J.W. Anderson, guys. There's a lot of things going around when it comes to J.W. Anderson. Is J.W. Anderson going to Dior? What's going on with J.W. Anderson? Where's J.W. Anderson going to be next? Is he going to Fendi? Even though Paolo Piccioli is basically almost close to confirmed to going to Fendi and all these kind of things. What's going to happen? All that sort of stuff. And this was started, first of all, by this Instagram post that he made where he just said, sunset. Okay, he changed it to sunset. It actually said into the sunset at one point. Yeah, it says edited. Originally, it said into the sunset. So people are like, what is he actually doing? Is he going to be retiring, saying into the sunset? What's this cryptic message about? Does that mean that he's leaving Loewe soon? Is something happening? And this was also sparked by the fact that this menswear season, a lot of the calendars have started coming out, and it has been confirmed that he has skipped Paris, Milan, and London Fashion Week. So it means he won't be showing a menswear show for Loewe. He won't be showing a menswear show for his eponymous namesake label. Now, there could be a very pragmatic reason for him doing that. It could just be because J.W. Anderson wants a rest. He's been designing all these collections constantly, non-stop. Maybe he just wants the rest. Maybe he just wants a break from that crazy output. And I think that if that's the case, more power to him. I think more designers should take a break. And I think more designers should do that. I think for their mental well-being, for their mental health, just to take a break, always in a state of exhaustion. I think that's a very good idea from J.W. Anderson, if that's the case. Also, something that has been mentioned that I haven't seen a lot of people talking about is it is rumored that fast retailing is looking to invest in J.W. Anderson's eponymous label. Right now, obviously, LVMH has the big stake in J.W. Anderson's brand, and it's said that fast retailing is looking to buy a big stake from LVMH, so the brand will then be split between fast retailing and LVMH. That would be really interesting because I think that he has a very interesting, relationship with fast retailing. He's been doing collaborations with Uniqlo for a really long time, and I think fast retailing is very much investing in being seen or trying to delve more into the high fashion space. You just look at the fact that Claire White Keller has become the creative director of Uniqlo, which is crazy. Someone of her resume being the creative director of Uniqlo is like insane, and then them investing in brands like J.W. Anderson. I think this is more of them kind of pushing to try and enter this luxury space and really delve into that space and start to have more learning. Yes, fast retailing is in the Uniqlo company, yes. So that was very interesting. Will he work at Dior? Will he be an amazing designer at Dior? I'm kind of in two minds about that, to be honest. I think that, J.W. Anderson is a designer that I do like his work. I do think that sometimes he delves a bit too into the artsy-fartsy world, which I do enjoy because I think when I review J.W. Anderson, so J.W. Anderson is one of those designers that doesn't do what I accuse a lot of designers of doing, where they just take the obvious reference. I think J.W. Anderson has some really interesting references every season, and it feels like every time I review his shows, I always learn something new about art history or just history in general, or, something about British culture or something. I always find out that I learn something and I find it really interesting. Now, the thing about Dior is that Dior is a couture house. And yes, Dior sells really well. They make a lot of money. Maria Grazia Chiuri has been doing well commercially. I think Kim Jones has also been doing well commercially with the menswear. I do say that a lot of the couture hasn't been sensational, hasn't been fantastic. I think a lot of Maria Grazia Chiuri's couture collections have been a bit forgettable. I don't think there's one Christian Dior haute couture collection that people go back during her tenure and people like, wow, all of us will remember this. This will be written about in books. I don't think she has any couture collection like that, which is crazy because you think of the history of Christian Dior as a house, you think of all the people that have designed there. Like so many designers that have designed insane couture, whether we're talking about Christian Dior himself to the likes of Yves Saint Laurent. And then the fact that Yves Saint Laurent was conscripted by the French military and Marc Bohan then was there. And people thought, oh, Yves Saint Laurent was going to come back, and he was kind of depressed. And then, loads of fashion history stuff that you guys probably know. And Marc Bohan eventually, stayed and had a really long tenure. You had the likes of Gianfranco. You've had the likes of John Galliano. You even had, who was it after Galliano before Raf? It was Bill Gayton, right? Who had worked with Galliano for loads of years. I think even like close to like more than 20 years with Galliano, right? Was kind of like in between. Then you've had the likes of Raf Simons there. You've had people like Lucy Meyer. You've had obviously Kim Jones. You've had Maria Grattaturi. So I just think if you look at the pedigree of some of the designers that have designed haute couture, the house of Christian Dior, compared to now where Christian Dior haute couture is forgettable, I think they need to save some of that. I think that something that luxury fashion is going to struggle from, and I've been saying this forever, is increasingly it's not worth it because all these scandals come out. I mean, Dior is literally in the midst and in the middle of the scandal of Italian sweatshops, right? And so these scandals are coming out. People are seeing that, it's not worth it by price. They're kind of overinflating their value, yet not even designing things that are well made. A lot of them are mass produced by people that aren't even craftspeople, like they're not artisans, right? So all these things are really breaking down the idea of luxury and the dream of luxury and the allure of luxury. And I think a way to bring it back is to bring back really interesting haute couture. You don't need to make money from haute couture. Right now, haute couture forms kind of an understanding of marketing for the brand. It's kind of world building in a way. It kind of helps with the dream and the allure of the luxury brands, but it's top down. If the haute couture is not interesting, the ready to wear is not interesting. It's just really, really commercial and it looks like every other brand. There aren't really interesting techniques that you're using. It's not forward thinking. All these factors put together, over time, people just get tired of the brand. A lot of these brands think that they're untouchable, but they're not. People really, when in mass, customer satisfaction goes down, you'll start to see a lot of these brands really struggle. I mean, look at the likes of Gucci and all the issues they've had. Look at the likes of Burberry. No brand is above, having bad financial years. And I think if they don't get a hold of it right now, because I think a lot of what sells under Maria Grattaturi, and I say this with a lot of brands, is it's not really stuff that she's created. A lot of stuff that's selling, like Maria Grattaturi brought back the saddle bag. That was designed by John Galliano, not her. So a lot of the reason why Dior makes so much money is because of the perfumes. That was not designed by Maria Grattaturi. She's not a perfumer. So sometimes a lot of people say, yeah, but she's selling, so, she's doing her job. It's like, okay, she's selling, but what's selling there? Did she design it? The ready-to-wear doesn't account for most of Dior sales. What accounts for most of Dior sales is bag sales that were designed before she was there. She's re-releasing bags that were designed by other designers before her. She doesn't really have a lot of her original bag designs that are really, taking off in fashion. The Dior bags that people buy are not her designs in mass, right? So another creative director could go in there and sell saddlebags. That doesn't really change much, right? So that's a thing about Maria Grattaturi, and I think that the second that people lose customer satisfaction and all this kind of things, we'll see a serious reckoning with a lot of these luxury brands. And so when we bring J.W. Anderson into this world, I would like to see, because I think J.W. Anderson could make the haute couture interesting and then create the dream again. And really, because J.W. Anderson at Loewe has done some really interesting things. He has these videos about the techniques on the Instagram page. You learn a lot about all the different artisans he works with. I really think that he could clean up the image. And so that's why I think it'll be really interesting to see if he goes to Dior, what he can do. But yeah, it'll just be interesting to see his haute couture at Dior and kind of what his ideas for that would be. Dr. Jean says people don't know how Galliano used to have $1 million couture budgets just to make hundreds of millions off accessories. Couture is being wasted all across the industry. Yeah, for sure. For sure. For sure. Dior is about to be sold in the future. Dior clothing and bags are horrible and cheap looking. I don't see Dior with any innovative designs anytime soon. Yeah, and that's the problem. Right now, in modern day Dior, I don't see anything innovative about it. There literally is nothing innovative about Dior to me, from what I see and what I review every single season. And I think they need to get a hold of that narrative because, like I've said, these brands genuinely think that they are untouchable. They are not. There will be such a big reckoning in like 10 to 20 years if they're not careful. The more these scandals come out. And I think that with these luxury brands, it's a race to the bottom. So the big issue with these luxury brands is that to make more money, you have to improve profit margins. And to improve profit margins, you have to go to regions in the world where you can pay them less money. And to, make more money, you have to reduce the quality of your garment. We've been talking about this since the 90s. This is not new. I hate that people try to act like this is a conversation in 2024. No, we've been having this conversation since before I was born. You read Dana Thomas's book, How Luxury Lost Its Luster. In the early 2000s, she talks about the fact that literally executives that work in fashion were saying that we save money on the lining now. We use cheaper linings because that is what is, is kind of what is requested of us to do to improve profit margins. We use cheaper thread. Like they are cutting corners in it's not just the fabrics. It's the threads they're using. It's the lining. It's the dyeing process. It's the fact that, when you have cashmere, when you process cashmere, you're supposed to leave it outside to dry for 24 hours. But because a lot of these luxury brands, their garments are mass produced, even though they try to act like it isn't, they blast it with heat and destroy the integrity of the fabric because they're trying to bring it to market faster because they have to make so many numbers of cashmere items, so they damage all the fabrics and then they try to tell us that it's luxury cashmere when it's not. You destroyed the fabric when you processed it. So, and this is a conversation we've been having since the 2000s, and it's only going to get worse because how else do you make more money? That's their business model. The only thing that's left to do is just to cut more corners. There is absolutely no way they can make significantly more money, and because these brands want to make more billions and billions, there is absolutely no way they can make more money without cutting. It's impossible. It's a race to the bottom and there's just going to be a reckoning. So they need designers that will kind of put their foot down and be like, no, I care about quality. My reputation is, on the line, especially with the stuff that I put out, especially the stuff that I put on the runway. This stuff there has to be a level of quality that comes with this stuff that I'm putting on the runway, right? I don't know why this is so hard for people to understand that this thing is really a race to the bottom. This is something that has just gotten worse and worse and worse and worse over time. This is nothing new. And this is something that will continue to be a problem for the foreseeable future, guys. So yeah, it just is what it is. Which brands do you think preserve quality of their garment? I mean, so most luxury brands haven't preserved the quality of their garments. Whether we're talking about Prada, it's gone to shit. And Prada has been going to shit since the 2000s. I mean, if you read How Luxury Lost Its Luster, Dana Thomas talks about how, in the 90s, she bought these Prada trousers and they're really well made. And then in the 2000s, she bought similar Prada trousers and the seams ripped not too long after she bought the trousers. So even back in the 2000s, the quality was already going downhill. Now it's just worse. So all these brands, Prada, Dior, Louis Vuitton, all these brands, the quality is terrible. Not of everything. The runaway pieces that most people won't buy, a lot of it, half of it will be well made. Half of it will be well made. Of course, the really expensive stuff, like the trunks, is well made. It's actually made in France, where the artisans are, right? But if we're talking about the products, that are mass produced, they are mass produced like any other mass produced product. A lot of the bags are no longer, there aren't just artisans in France, making a lot of these bags. They are mass produced. A lot of, the garments that you see, the t-shirts, they're mass produced. So, you know, I don't. So when people ask me about quality, okay, Bottega compared to a lot of brands has decent quality. Hermes has decent quality if we're talking about the bags. Ready to wear is to be seen. It's here and there. But if you want quality, I just don't think you should be looking at these luxury brands because they are very much race to the bottom business model. So you should be looking at brands smaller brands from designers that actually care. Like Yan Vanessa, he really cares about quality. Like I was just, speaking to him. I just came back from Antwerp like a week ago, and he really, really cares about the quality of his garments, where the garments are made, how the garments are produced, how the fibers are dyed, how the fibers are processed to make sure it's not damaged in the process, where they are stored, what the origin of the fabrics are. Like, he cares. That's a designer that actually cares. So I think when, customers become more discerning, what we need to do is just put all these race to the bottom brands by the wayside and then adopt a new club of brands that actually care about quality in general. Like, I don't think these luxury brands anymore, they're ever going to represent quality in the way that we expect it, because they're just, I just don't see how they can make more money without cutting more corners. It's literally impossible. I don't know how it could be possible for them to make even more money without doing that. It literally doesn't make any sense in my view. Like, it's just impossible. Like, how do they do that, right? Jacquemus quality is atrocious, and I know you know that. You just wanted me to say that, but I'll still say it. Jacquemus quality is horrific. Shit show. So when you say ready to wear, it depends. Because, like, if we're talking ready to wear in terms of what goes on the runway, then yes, Hermes does have good quality. But if we're talking every single piece of ready to wear, there are some Hermes pieces that are mass produced, even though and I saw an interview recently where they literally said, like in 60 minutes, that nothing in Hermes is mass produced, which is complete, utter, and total bullshit. Because some of the best-selling fragrances in fashion come from Hermes, and they are mass produced. And there are other pieces from Hermes that are mass produced. I think, and this is the problem with a lot of people, execs and people that run these brands. When they say things, people are just like, well, this person said it, so it must be true. But no, it's not. No, it's not. This man literally sat there and said that everything is made by artisans in France. I said, oh my God, without a doubt, that is not true. It's just not true. But I saw that video, I was like, that's interesting. But yeah, most of what they make, though, Hermes, is really good quality. And it's way better quality than almost every single, like, in quotation marks, luxury brand. Like, Hermes quality is better than Prada, it's better than Gucci, it's better than Dior, it's better than all these brands, right? Do you think declining sales will give these houses enough of a push to change, meaning increasing quality, more imagination? I don't think so, only because if they then increase quality, then it's going to cost them more to make things, and it's really going to fuck up their profit margin. So the only way they could deal with that is to increase prices, but then they price out the middle class, and that's the point of their business model. If they only are selling to the upper class, they won't make any money. If they only sell to the upper class, they'll make as much money as Christian Dior made, which wasn't that much money because he was only selling to the upper class. So his market wasn't big, right? How couturiers historically started making a lot of money. They were selling to the upper class. They made good money, like they were rich, but they weren't making billions, right? They weren't making hundreds of millions. Then you see the couturiers start to license out their garments. You see, even when you read manifestos of Diana Vreeland, she talks about, the New York market and Christian Dior and how he was selling the rights to a lot of his designs and they were being copied by a lot of designers in New York. And that's how the American market became very familiar with Christian Dior silhouettes and stuff like that. That's the case for many other couturiers, right? Then they started licensing out the rights to their garments and their designs. Then you see the invention of these business tycoons, Bernard Arnault's, the Francois Pinot's that really started to mass produce things. So I just think if they go back to a business model of the original couturiers where everything is about quality and craftsmanship, they'll lose too much money because the price point will be too high and they'll only have to sell to rich people and then they won't make money and then everything will go downhill. So I almost feel like they've kind of trapped themselves where they are now, and that's their fault. That's their fault. But they trapped themselves. Fragrances killed luxury. I guess so, but I love fragrances. So I wouldn't say I like smelling nice. Although you don't have to buy fragrances from a fashion brand, right? You can buy a brand from an actual perfumer. So yeah, you don't. If fashion brands didn't make fragrances, there'll still be fragrances in the world. That's the thing. Are luxury fragrances worth it? That's a very layered question. That's very layered. For me, most of them are worth it, but then what does worth it mean? Like, do you mean in terms of like a, because some of the pricing in luxury fragrances comes down to how expensive it is to make the bottles, the actual development of the fragrance and how unique it is being compensated by the cost of the actual fragrance itself. Like it's a very layered question. It's not something I can answer very quickly. We we can't escape from fast fashion mass produced clothes at this point. And yeah, so going back to the conversation of JW Anderson, it'll be really interesting to see how exactly he navigates all these issues, like the quality issues, especially the fact that Dior is bang in the middle of one of the biggest scandals we've seen this year in fashion, right? Dior and Armani, but obviously he's not been linked with Armani. He's been linked with Dior. So if he eventually goes there one day, it'll be interesting to see how he does that. But yeah, that's really the speculation that a lot of people have been having about JW Anderson and, the cryptic messages that JW Anderson has been sharing on social media. You're getting financially graped to smell mildly good when getting hugged. So I don't, when I say I like to smell good, it's not for other people, it's for myself. Like, I'm wearing a fragrance now and I've been at home all day. It's not for anyone else because I'm literally at home alone. I wear fragrances because I just like the smell and I like smelling different notes and I just like it. I just like fragrances in general. I'm just a fan of fragrances. So it's not really about a woman smelling me and being like, oh my God, you smell so good. That's not why I like spend a lot of money on fragrances and why I'm into fragrances. I'm not trying to attract women by the fragrance I wear. That's not why I'm into fragrances. Harry Moore says, I guess unfortunately fashion inherently occupies a capitalist framework, so authentic quality and craftsmanship can lead to contradictions for the houses and a temperamental nature to the lifespan. Yeah, totally. What do you think will be the defining characteristics of the next generation of designers? For example, will they choose to be smaller? Will women's and men's become more blended? Yeah, I think we're going to see more women's and men's collections be more blended, which I kind of disagree with. I kind of push back against that. Only because I understand the concept of androgynous fashion, but it just doesn't work in reality because there's a biological reality to the difference between the body of a female and the body of a male. So unfortunately, like, I'm a man, I have really broad shoulders. Most women don't have shoulders as broad as mine, which means that if I wear a blazer, the shoulders need to, like, the fact that a lot of men have broad shoulders need to be accounted for. If I can't fit into garments that are made for women, even if I like, wow, they're interesting because my shoulders will rip the blazers in two. So I just think there's a biological drawback to being like, yeah, everything's androgynous. I think it's just going to make for really bad fitting clothing. But I do think a lot of designers will push it because it's kind of like a, what's the right word? It's just kind of like a fashion thing. Like, people think that it's really fashionable to be like, yeah, like, my clothes have no gender, which it is in a sense. Like, there are certain things that I think shouldn't be gendered, like bags or footwear. Like, why does that have to be gendered? Like, what the hell is like, why is it a woman's bag? Why is it a men's bag? Why is it like, especially with accessories? I don't think it makes sense to gender accessories. But when it comes to garments, like the shape of trousers, the shape of jackets, that sort of stuff, I do think that there needs to be some consideration for the biological realities of differences in our bodies, right? But I think in all aspects, there are always fashion designers for different people. So at every point in time, there will be the designers that design for a male body, and designers that design for women, and then designers that design in an androgynous way, and all these different designers. So I think it's fine. I think we'll see that. But I just hope that the next generation actually sees all these issues with fashion and pushes against it. They really care about where they're sourcing their fabrics from. They really care about where their things are coming from. And I do notice that the new generation of people in fashion, I'll show you guys something actually. The new generation of people in fashion actually care about this sort of stuff. And it really gives me a lot of hope, right? It gives me a lot of hope. So I went to this place in Antwerp a week ago. It's called Bakermat. It's a fashion fabric shop in Antwerp. Really, really cool shop, like really cool. Basically, the goal of this fabric shop is to educate young designers about what quality is, what quality means, how to source good fabrics, where to source good fabrics from, what good fabrics look like, all these kind of things. That's their main goal. So they go into a lot of fashion schools. They work with the likes of Central St. Martin's. They work with Polymoda. They work with all these different schools, educate the students. They collaborate with the students. And then, of course, they also work with brands, and they work with individuals that can, like, as an individual, you can literally just go into the shop and just buy a roll of fabric. But in a bigger capacity, they work with a lot of people, right? So I'm seeing pockets of people that are starting to, out of frustration from where fashion is going, how unsustainable it is, there are these people that are really, putting a lot of effort into these things. Like, they have these resource events where you can actually explore a wide variety of fabrics from their textile partners. You can select your favorites, the quantity you need, and place your orders. They'll give you all the information about where the fabrics are coming from, everything. So I'm just seeing younger people, right? Because I met these guys, they're very young. I'm seeing younger people really pushing it back against the terrible way that these corporate entities are running fashion. And I love to see that. Unfortunately, like someone said in the comments, there's also, that's being combated by CN, which is literally one of the fastest growing fashion companies in the world, which is very disheartening that overall in society, we have this throwaway culture to fashion and garments. It's really disturbing. I hate the fact that people think that, in wider society, think that it's okay to wear a garment once. It burns my soul. Like, to have this one dress for, this event that you're going to, and then you'll never wear it again. It really annoys me. But I'm not famous enough or well-known enough to really preach and keep preaching to people that it's okay to wear things 50 times and 100 times. Just buy a garment that is good, save up for it, and you'll be fine. If you look at, that was how people used to buy garments back in the day. And I miss that time. I always mention this, but I remember with Jennifer, who's probably watching the stream, we went to a Bibber exhibition, and she was telling me how at the time, especially in the 60s, the 70s, actually, more so the 70s, Mary Quant is seen as this designer that, was at the time when London designers were being liberated, and she was banging the moment of the swinging 60s and the Beatles and everything that was happening there. And she put women in mini skirts and all that sort of stuff, which is kind of true. But something you need to bear in mind about Mary Quant's clothing is that her clothing was expensive as fuck. Like, everyday people could not just buy Mary Quant. So when you think about it, you had to have designers that were doing interesting things but were actually affordable, right? And so Bibber was a designer that had very well designed, interesting clothes that are actually good quality, even though they were cheaper. And people had to still save up money, even though Bibber was seen as like more affordable clothing. People still had to save up a lot of their paychecks to buy one Bibber piece, and they would cherish it. And that would be the piece that they would wear for years. And because people knew how to like sew to a certain extent. So if they had damage in their garments, they would fix it themselves. I don't know how we've gone so far away from treating clothes like that and having that relationship with clothes. I don't know when we, as a society, just had this throwaway culture, or we think it's okay. Because I think also this idea that we think it's okay for clothing to be crazy, crazy cheap is part of the problem. I think we should, you know, I think it's better if clothing was more expensive, which means that, you know, artisans and these people are actually compensated properly for their work, and we're not paying people slave wages to create a lot of these garments that are created. And if it takes, you know, less people buying all these clothes, because people cannot tell me that people don't have money to buy clothes when, because the conversation is always, oh, you know, like people can't, you know, afford clothes. But then Shein is literally one of the fastest growing companies in the world. So if we just took the average Shein price and tripled it, people would still be able to afford it. They just wouldn't be able to buy as much. But then if we could triple the quality, now we have garments that aren't going to landfills. We have garments that aren't being thrown away. We aren't contributing to this throwaway culture and fashion. So I just think things need to be said and things need to be done, right? Maybe Shein is putting out more waste than all other clothing companies combined. Probably, to be honest. I taught 17-year-old freshmen when I was at the end of college, all using Shein. Don't get your hopes up. Oh my God, that's really sad. God, that's so sad. I was reading a post that was saying there are enough clothes on this planet to dress the next 6 generations. Exactly. The main moral issue is middle-class demographic just trying to save money here and there, buying plastic, cheap, and child labor clothes. But from what I see, now obviously I don't know every middle-class person in the world, but I live in the UK, and the middle class in the UK does have a throwaway culture when it comes to garments. Like, they buy loads and loads of garments that they don't need. Like, I have friends who always tell me that they don't have money, but every time I see them, they buy, and these aren't rich people, these are like working to middle class people, right? They have bought a new garment. So they can afford to buy clothes, but they just have a throwaway culture or relationship with the clothing that they buy. So most of the stuff they don't wear, they just buy it because it's impulsive. And I think that impulsive nature comes from the fact that things are so cheap. If things are more expensive, I don't think they'll be so as impulsive with their clothing buying decisions, to be honest. That's saying consumers who don't have much money could help stop the decline in quality and rise in fast fashion by shopping at charity shops. Yeah, exactly. Because obviously, when it comes to cost, you can buy things secondhand if like things are really, really expensive. And I don't know why buying things secondhand sometimes is really vilified. I think it's completely fine because we already have enough garments in the world as it stands. So I don't think there's anything wrong with, you know, buying secondhand. I think it's kind of strange that people are like, oh, secondhand. I think that's really strange. Strange mentality. Harry says, but young people, etc. Lots of my friends are thrifting way more now, and that culture of Depop has definitely been healthy and positive. That's good to see. But I think these things like the growth of Shein, and then, you know, people like this fabric store that I mentioned in Antwerp, and then, you know, people buying secondhand and stuff, they're kind of happening hand by hand. And I hope that over time we have less of a throwaway culture in fashion. I do think that part of it is lack of education. Like, every time I meet people that don't care about fashion, when I tell them about all these issues and things, I'm the first person they've ever heard this kind of information from. That like fashion is one of the biggest polluters in the world by industry. Like, a lot of people don't know that. Even though you would think it's obvious, but if someone is not into fashion, they just wouldn't think about that. Because the everyday person doesn't think of the impact of fashion. They think of fashion as a very like frivolous thing. Like, you work in fashion, that's not a real job. Even though fashion is one of the biggest polluters of the reason why the sea levels are rising is partially because of the fashion industry. Like, it's the fashion industry is actually one of the most important industries in the world. It leads to some of the biggest waste in the world. Like, the processing of making garments and the heat and waste products that creates and the damage that it does on the environment, whether it's down to dyes being fed into the sea and the ecology just completely being destroyed in certain habitats. Like, I find it quite funny that day-to-day people think that like working in fashion or like fashion is not a real job when it's more influential than most industries in the world. It makes more money than most industries in the world. It's more polluting than most industries in the world. The scale is bigger than most industries in the world. Everyone in the world wears clothes. It's crazy. It's crazy. Wait, Rob said, I would hope the chat can be respectful. Lots of rudeness tonight. Who was rude? Maybe I'm not up to date with the comments, but I haven't really seen a lot of rudeness. Deb Shop says, I buy a lot of ready-to-wear secondhand, usually stuff that is current and in fab condition, along with a few vintage pickups. It's so much fun. Yeah, vintage shopping is really fun. It really, really is. And like so many places are so good for like, oh my God, in Antwerp. If you're from Antwerp and you're watching this, you have no idea how lucky you are. Like the prices in places like Rosier 41 or Vedic Mark 6 or Labels Inc. Like you guys are so lucky. So lucky. Obviously, I can still go to Antwerp, but it's not like I can just wake up and go to Antwerp, right? Like the Eurostar costs money. Like if I'm staying there for more than a day, the hotel costs money. Oh my God, Duke, thank you so much for the donation. My Shein budget goes to you instead. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. That's really funny. But anyway, rant over, guys. Rant over. Rant completely over. This YouTube channel runs on your support. If you want to support the channel, you can subscribe to my Patreon. You'll gain access to exclusive content that includes everything from my Patreon podcast, where I give a behind-the-scenes insight into the fashion industry, as well as a fashion book club, where I review my favorite fashion books. You can also check out my fashion ebook, which highlights the best fashion journalists to follow, definitions of common fashion terminology, and how to determine what a good source of fashion information is. The links to everything are in the description below.